Hi, Misha here, and last time I mentioned there was one other clone group that was kept in major service after the Empire came to be, and that, probably to no one's surprise, was the Purge Troopers, part of the Inquisitorius, and honestly, one of my favorite, kind of more modern designs. And it's kind of a shame that in the Black Series, these started off as kind of exclusive figures, but are easier to get now. And we have 4 different ones, 2 different generations, and I'm going to talk about what these guys really were. And we'll begin with this one, the so-called Electro Staff Purge Trooper. Even if he looks like he's just kind of holding a big stick. This did come with the electrical effects. They're just in the box over there, and I didn't feel like putting them on. Now, the Purge Troopers were really the last clones. The last batch of clones were put into this role right around 18 BBY. But their armor was based on one of the elite groups of Clone War clones, the Airborne, the Paratroopers, the Air Trooper. These would drop in as a rapid response unit and had a little bit better armor, but mostly it was the helmet. That's what's carried over for the Purge Trooper. There's a lot of gear, equipment, other resources in the helmet. And so that was taken for the Purge Trooper. I don't know if any surviving Airborne troopers were inducted as well as the new ones, possibly. Do you know that the armor got a new slick black paint job with some red and silver poppet? They almost all have these pauldrons of different types, either black or gray for lower ranks, red for captains or squad leaders. And the armor was also impregnated to make it lightsaber resistant. And that's because these guys were, of course, sent to purge the galaxy of the remaining Jedi. Keep in mind that outside of Order 66, the Jedi were told to the public as being complete traitors who tried to assassinate the Chancellor. So, yeah. And to that end, something like an Electro Staff was felt to be appropriate for going in a wild lightsaber user, and these staffs were proofed against lightsabers themselves. They had a small backpack, pretty standard. They had a comma, another thing taken from Mandalorian culture. And they typically either operated in small groups, small squads in themselves, or a Purge Trooper would lead a squad of standard stormtroopers, if that's just how it worked out. Either way, they were considered to be elite special forces. I mean, these are non-force wielding people going up against former Jedi, some of which might have been indulging a little more of their dark impulses. But just a neat design, very, very similar to Phase 2 clone armor, but with added stuff, full utility belt, and they came with some pretty unique weapons. Next, we have the version with the so-called Electro Hammer. This actually just came out. Was it late last year or early this year? And I've been wanting to cover him in a video. Essentially, aside from maybe a different pauldron and a different color comma, he's the same figure. But he was in a 3-pack, Amazon exclusive. And he does have a unique and very large weapon. In the kind of team-working thing, the Electro Staff kind of had the range and the ability to block and defend against the lightsaber. This big old hammer, it took a little bit of time to swing around, move around, and once he was committed to a strike, he was kind of there. So he was vulnerable. But if he hit a Jedi, chances are he would do significant damage or completely knock him out. This would deliver, hopefully for him, fatal blow. Just kind of interesting hammer. I guess the hammer is kind of not really the right term, but that's what it's used as. And it's a big piece. Easy to have him grip it with both hands, even if it is the kind of older Black Series mold. I don't care. It's still neat. Again, I just kind of think the Purge Trooper is interesting. But what do you think? What do you think about this variant? I definitely like the hammer more than the stick the first one had. The leaders, the commanders, as I said, the captains of the squadron, typically had red pauldrons and slightly different commas. And you can see this one is kind of split in the back a little bit and got a little more edging going on. And he's holding the third close quarters weapon, the electro baton. Sometimes they would even have two of these. This is for more or less close range, quick strikes with good repeat, and was a pretty common weapon, even used for crowd control and less lethal force. You see some droids like the KX droids using them as well. And in his other hand, he has one of the old clone DC-15S blaster carbines, because the Purge Troopers, while they really kind of did prefer their melee weapons, would pull out a blaster for ranged attacks against the Jedi. And oftentimes the squad leader would kind of pin down the Jedi as best he could with a ranged weapon, leaving the other members to kind of get in close and wear him down. And that's why these guys had to work in teams, because one-on-one, even the most well-trained Purge Trooper, and again, these were very well-trained, very committed guys, would eventually tire out. And even though they started off as all clones, sometime between 18 and 14 BBY, there started to be recruits. But these were kind of the most fanatical, most dedicated of what would have been the Stormtrooper Corps, or at least adjunct to it. So it wasn't like they were more merciful. If anything, they seemed to have vendettas against the Jedi and were very, very motivated. So even though they might not have been as physically perfect as soldiers as maybe some of the clones, they made up for it with emotional determination. And one of those could have easily been a captain in a squad. And of course, again, as I said in a previous video, by 14 BBY, the clones were kind of aging out. The oldest ones were in their mid-30s, nearly 40 in some cases, and even the younger ones were over 30 at this point in genetic time. So younger beings were needed. And of course, the Purge Trooper was kind of a disposable, sacrificial trooper. Send these in, wear Jedi down, distract them, let the Inquisitors do their thing. I'm sure from the Empire's point of view, a perfect way to utilize clones that were, frankly, only with a limited shelf life anyway. I mean, from a very Machiavellian point of view, it actually made perfect sense for what that's worth. But yeah, the captain, the commander, the squad leader, whatever you want to call it, and the third electro weapon that was deployed, especially in the early days of the Purge Troopers. These guys worked alongside the Inquisitors, and of course were ultimately under the command of Vader. Not only were they sent after Jedi, they were sometimes used to support and protect very critical installations of the Empire. Keep in mind, in the early days, they still had limited resources, rebuilding after the Clone Wars. So they would have a few other duties throughout. But as time went on, Phase 2 clone armor kind of became out of date and probably wasn't being produced anymore. Around 10 BBY, the second generation, or phase, came to be. The first three were from the Jedi Fallen Order game and subsequent Jedi Survivor, as well as some comics. But the Jedi Purge had been in, Star Wars lore, legends as we call it today, since the beginning. I remember even when I was a kid, I was told that Darth Vader wiped out the Jedi. Even the concept of the Inquisitors isn't 100% new. So there have been other Purge troopers. But this guy here is from the Obi-Wan series and was an exclusive to Walmart, I believe. I remember buying him and was tickled with him. I thought he was pretty neat. And but at this point, these are recruits, no longer clones, or at least the majority. We have a new helmet, similar to, but not the same as, the Stormtrooper. In fact, it has a little bit of Darth Vader going on the grill. I would imagine the airborne stuff was not running out. The pauldron is similar, but it's no longer anchored on the side with the strap. It kind of moves around. And the chest armor's got a little extra compared to a regular Stormtrooper. And the backpack is actually quite different, which denotes probably more storage. There's a small antenna for probably longer range communications. So there's definitely more going on there. We have a comma again. And this is a newer mold. This is kind of based on the Generation 2 clone trooper, so not bad. Really isn't. But it's a blending of Purge trooper and Stormtrooper armor, and I like it. I like it a lot. But we see these around the time of the Obi-Wan series in 9 BBY. And of course he's holding a new weapon here. This is the E11D heavy barrel blaster. The central chassis core receiver of the gun is the same as the standard E11, but it's reinforced for rapid fire sustained shots, heavier barrel, more rigidity, better heat dissipation. In the Star Wars universe, heat is a major thing. Guns overheat more than anything else. It has a glow stick on the side, flashlight. It also can support, depending on the version, an underbarrel mini grenade launcher. And it has a more full-sized butt stock for better aimed fire. Blastech kind of created this for elite soldiers, for urban warfare. You know, when a trooper might go up against big numbers and need to let off rounds and hold a position. So you don't see this as a standard infantry gun ever, but you'll see a few different elite units carrying it. And again, I think it's really cool. It's interesting to me that the Purge troopers are kind of going away from the electro-staff weaponry, and going back to range weaponry, even if it is a little more powerful. Makes sense. Maybe the Jango Fett clones were better at hand-to-hand than the recruits, or maybe even the Empire didn't feel quite like making Purge troopers as disposable now as then, because these guys had a lot of money put into training them, and Palpatine might have been evil, but he wasn't stupid. He wasn't going to spend money and blow it. Well, in theory, TIE pilots might have something to say about that. But no, this is the second generation, both weaponry and armor, and this would slowly phase out the Phase 1. It would actually serve alongside it for quite a while, but eventually. But that said, by around 4-3 BBY, the Purge Trooper Corps was all but disbanded because there were just not that many Jedi out there anymore. Either they had gone into permanent hiding, they had died, whatever. So really, by the time of the Galactic Civil War, the Rebellion, there were no Purge Troopers because there was simply no need. So we can imagine that these guys that survived probably went into the Royal Guard or some other elite forces, which we'll look at in other videos, because there's plenty of avenues they could have gone into. But the Purge Troopers were among the first of the Empire's elite forces with a very specific goal, and kind of part of the army, but separate and under the direct command of Vader and the Inquisitorius, and kind of outside of the main structure. That kind of explains why their stuff was all different. That said, we do know that a Stormtrooper could aspire to become a Purge Trooper with enough training, experience, and I'm sure connections. Although I doubt nepotism would get you that far. That was more something for the officer corps. Nepotism, that is. If you were going to be a Purge Trooper, you had to prove your mettle. So there we have it, one of my favorites. I have to confess, I'm kind of a sucker for any of these figures that comes with a unique accessory or unique weapon. I kind of get tired of the same old E11 or DH-17 blaster. They have their place, they have their time, but I like that all but one of these guys came with a pretty unique weapon. Yeah, the Phase 2, the E11D is shared by a couple of others, but not that many. And the original release of the Purge Trooper did just come with the standard DC-15, but the next two, of course, came with their electro weapons. And the electro baton I actually borrowed from a scout trooper. I actually bought a few of the gaming grade scout troopers with the batons because I found them on Amazon sale. I think it was Amazon for like $8. So figured for that that'd be worth it just for their accessories. And it is a neat accessory. It actually telescopes and has the electrical effects that you can have on or off. It even plugs into their backpack, but I digress. But yeah, let me know which one you like the most. I think for me, it's probably the Phase 2. I kind of like the whole kit there. Then again, I'm in the minority of not hating the Obi-Wan series, but what can I say? I'm a sucker for Ewan McGregor. I just can't really hate anything he's in. I mean, do I wish it were better? Yeah. Could have been a lot worse, though. He could have forced himself to death, literally. So, you know, there's that. Anyway, this is Misha, and also Peanut. And we'll catch you very soon next time.